So we start with Brexit. The latest EU summit in Brussels has left the British Prime Minister Theresa May facing a dwindling number of options over Britain's exit from the European Union. The 27 EU leaders made it very clear that the draft withdrawal agreement reached after nearly 2 years of talks is not open to change. That pushes any meaningful alterations until after Britain leaves the bloc on March the 29th. When the two sides will begin discussing a separate treaty on future economic ties. EU leaders emphasised their desire for an orderly Brexit, but said they remain unconvinced that Britain can respect their agreement. Some said they're even planning for a potentially no-deal scenario. Earlier, our correspondent Mariam Zaidi filed this report from Brussels.
The UK Prime Minister Theresa May came here on a mission to seek legal assurances from the EU on the Irish backstop, that fail-safe to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland. That has been a big sticking point, of course, for MPs in the UK, and the one big factor that could see her Brexit bill fail to get through the House of Commons. Now, discussions on Thursday went, of course, into the night. When EU leaders emerged after midnight, they confirmed that they would not renegotiate the Brexit deal reached in November, and on the backstop, they would make all efforts to prevent it or find solutions to get rid of it if it went into place. Now, in the UK, this backstop is not seen as a fail-safe, rather a tool by the EU to keep the UK in a never-ending customs union with no end date. And on that, the EU Commission President said this.
We would like our British friends in 4 weeks' time to let us know what they are expecting, because we are taking part in a debate that is sometimes nebulous. I would like to see some firm clarifications on this point, as we do not know what will be the collective reactions of the 27 European member states and the United Kingdom. The European Commission will publish on December the 19th all the generally useful information concerning the preparation for a no-deal Brexit.
The use of the word nebulous seems to have ticked off Mrs May. Now, she was caught on camera telling Juncker off for directly insulting her. In a much lively end-of-summit press conference a few hours ago, Juncker said May realised that she had gotten the wrong end of the stick and even gave him a kiss. Now, Theresa May, when she spoke after the summit ended, she said that as formal conclusions, these commitments do have legal status. But EU leaders, of course, do understand and empathise with May. Just listen in to what the EU Council President said.
We really appreciate the efforts by the Prime Minister to ratify our common agreement. My impression is that, in fact, we have treated Prime Minister May with a much greater empathy and respect than some British MPs, for sure.
Prime Minister May said she will continue her discussions with EU leaders over the coming days, but with all her efforts, they're unlikely to win her detractors over. Mariam Zaidi, CGTN, Brussels.
Earlier, CGTN America talked to David Smith, the Washington bureau chief of the Guardian newspaper. He detailed what Theresa May is trying to accomplish in the EU meeting.
I think Theresa May was trying to win at least some concessions from the European Union, having really tried and failed to get this deal passed at home in the UK Parliament. That all went horribly wrong this week. There was meant to be a parliamentary vote when it was clear she was going to lose that. It got postponed. Then she even faced a challenge to her leadership and a vote of no confidence. She did prevail there, but was somewhat wounded. She only won 63% of the vote, so it was not a ringing endorsement. She actually had no choice but to then get back on the plane, go back to Brussels and try and win some more concessions. But the European Union has stood firm throughout. In fact, throughout this entire process, they know that they want to make this pretty difficult for the UK to then send a message to other member states who might consider leaving one day. Look what a mess it was for Britain. Don't go down this road. And they've played a firm hand and played it quite well. The opposition leader in the UK, Jeremy Corbyn, says the deal she's coming back with is dead in the water. Describes it as botched.
And back at home, Theresa May survived a no-confidence vote from her own party 2 days ago. But is she actually on track to deliver Brexit? Here's a quick update of the timeline and possible Brexit scenarios.
To give itself time to build consensus, the Theresa May government has delayed the Brexit vote to January 2019. The deadline for her is January 21st. If her government fails to put its Brexit agreement to vote, or if Parliament rejects her plan by January 21st, the government's power to renegotiate the deal would be curtailed. But if all goes through as planned, the UK would attend its last EU summit as a member in the third week of March. Deal or no deal, on March 29th, the UK will formally exit the European Union. Then a transition period of 19 months would begin, giving both the EU and the UK enough time to negotiate the terms of their future relationship. In October this year, both parties agreed to extend the transition period in case they fail to finalize a formal agreement by December 31st, 2020. Now, let's analyze the possible scenarios. Number one, the British Parliament approves the withdrawal bill before the deadline of March 29th, and the UK leaves the European bloc. Experts believe that unless UK politicians put up a united front to back Theresa May, it's highly unlikely that this scenario will become a reality. The next possibility, analysts say, is the most probable one. The UK Parliament rejects the government's deal and thus begins a complex process. According to the EU Withdrawal Act, in case of a no-deal scenario by January 21st, the government would have to make a statement to Parliament setting out what it intends to do next. Parliament would then have an opportunity to vote on government plans. The MPs could accept, reject, or even amend government plans, though the amendment motions would not be legally binding on the British government. Nonetheless, a withdrawal bill would still need Parliament's approval to formally exit the Union. In the present situation, a consensus within the political class looks highly doubtful, which ultimately leads the UK to a no-deal hard Brexit on March 29th. Economists say this scenario would be disastrous for the country as free movement of people and goods would end, and it would result in a long-dreaded hard border between Ireland and the UK's Northern Ireland. With 9 says, this is Victor Ning, CGTN.